Now, going from Karl Rove to the big lie, the GOP loves to claim victory when they're insecure, and it's nothing new for the Republicans to promise a blowout victory. The real question is, why is the media fucking falling for it? Um, so one more, it's we already had the voting's already done. Hallelujah. The polls were so tight and the campaigning so intense. It's like you reach a point where you almost don't care who wins anymore, and you just want it to be over. But of course you do fucking care who wins, as we all must in this age of authoritarian right-wing lunacy. It was basically Heather Digby Parton wrote on Friday that nobody really knows anything about this election. We didn't know who was going to win or lose, but it could go either. But it was going to go either way. It was either going to be a close result or one side could sweep both houses of Congress with big wins. But if you read the headlines and listened to the pundits and strategists on TV, you would think that the evidence showed clearly that the Republicans were going to run away with it, and that didn't happen. And there was a reasoning for that. Republicans want to plant this notion in the press, and the sad sack Democrats play into it by prematurely assembling the circular firing squad whenever a race is close. Um, you see headlines like Democrats fear midterm drubbing as the party leaders rush to defend the blue seats, but the fact that Donald Trump held big Klan rallies just days before the election in Florida and Pennsylvania, where the GOP is defending numerous seats, isn't framed the same way. We have the CNN panelist. The CNN panelist predicts bad night and says the Democrats didn't listen to voters throughout the election, which they actually did. While the New Yorker publishes a widely read article headlined "Why Republican Insiders Think the GOP is Poised for a Blowout." And maybe this is all true, but maybe it will turn out that Democrats have blown the election, even through all the fundamentals and historical precedents, and it suggests his defeat was more or less preordained. Or maybe the Republicans played a masterful hand in winning an election where everyone assumed was already in the fucking bag. But we will see, and we did. But let's not kid ourselves about what is going on in these final days. But the Republicans are playing the press for Trumps, as they do every single fucking time. Of course they may win, but this election is close, and they're not soothsayers. It's a deliberate strategy. The most famous purveyor of this strategy was Karl Rove, also known as Bush's brain. The strategist who eked out a history-changing victory for his guy in 2000. And Rove was a big believer in the bandwagon effect, which assumed that a significant chunk of the voting public will go with those they perceive as winners. So when a race is close, you put on a big show to pretend that you're confident of that winner, in the hopes of getting any last-minute wobblers, or people who might not otherwise vote to get behind your team. And it's fun to watch and win. But in close races, Rove reasoned this strategy might just make the difference. But it's not scientific, and nobody should take a GOP strategist's word for anything in the final days of a campaign, and they're just spinning it. Now Karl Rove went so far as to send George W. Bush to California in the final days of the 2000 campaign to convince the press that they were so confident of a blowout victory that they were hoping to expand the map into deep blue states. The New York Times blared, a confident Bush says he can win California's vote. As it turned out, Al Gore won that state by double digits, and had led observers to wonder whether Rove should have just sent Bush to Florida instead, the state that he ended up winning by only 537 disputed votes. And they did the same thing 4 years later by sending Dick Cheney to Hawaii, and the Los Angeles Times dutifully reported that Aloha State has become a surprise campaign battleground. No, it hadn't. Democrats won Hawaii by 9 points as usual. And Rove didn't just deploy this strategy of election campaigns. As Bush's senior advisor, he played the same game of public opinion over the war with Iraq. Now, in shaping this message, the White House officials had drawn on the work of Duke University political scientists Peter Feaver and Christopher Gelpi, who have examined the public opinion on Iraq in previous conflicts. Now, Feaver, who served on the staff of for the National Security Council in the early years of the Clinton administration, had joined the Bush NSC staff about a month ago as the special advisor for strategic planning and the institutional reform. Now, Feaver and Gelpi categorized people on the basis of two questions. Was the decision to go to war in Iraq right or wrong? And can the United States ultimately win? Now, in this analysis, the key issue now is how people feel about the prospect of winning. They concluded that many of the questions asked in public opinion polls, such as whether going to war was worth it and whether casualties are at an unaccepted level, are far less relevant now in engaging the public tolerance or patience for the road ahead than the question of whether people believe the war is winnable. Now, that explains the infamous 2003 Bush gaffe with the mission accomplished. That didn't work out in the long run because Republicans couldn't deny reality forever as the Iraq War began to go south shortly after that. The press was gullible enough, and the public stayed on board long enough, but the Bush team to win re-election and support the surge that prolonged the war. It's simple enough. If you call yourself a winner, you and the people will start to believe it, at least for a while, and then you have and then you will have to act accordingly. Now we're in a new landscape these days. We're in a new landscape these days with election denial prominently featured on the menu. Karl Rove is getting booed as a rhino sellout at the GOP Klan rallies. The bandwagon effect is still in play, but they now have a backup plan: spreading the big lie. It's not overly cynical to suspect that a whole lot of the happy talk coming from Republican strategists, whispering in reporters' ears about how great their private polling looks, is just a setup for the possibility that they won't do as well as they would like. We already know that the voters are fully indoctrinated to believe that the Democrats can only win if they cheat, which the Democrats don't really cheat. That's the Republicans, and the Republicans have created a full-scale election denial operation to challenge any negative results that they don't like that doesn't go their way. In some instances, they have challenged election results in counties that Trump won by double digits. Election denial has become the party's primary organizing principle. Now all of this has been aided and abetted by the Republican pollsters flooding the zone during this cycle, and the right-leaning aggregators like Real Clear Politics have helped set the sky-high Republican expectations, as the Atlantic's Ron Brownstein equipped on Twitter. Now, none of this is accidental or a coincidence. Their strategy is clear. In a close race, pretend you're winning in hopes of enticing voters to jump on board. If that doesn't work, claim the election was stolen and deny the legitimacy of your opponent's victory. This is what the Republicans do, and why the press allows itself to be manipulated this way year after year is another fucking question that we have no answer for. But media folks can't possibly fail to understand what's going on. After all this fucking time, on some level, they fall for it like they fucking did the last time. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube, and for just a little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way. And thanks for listening.